I think one of the most unique features of online public schools compared to other public schools is the equal access and the ability for families anywhere in the state to be able to access that school. If they've been often termed the most democratic of schools, in that regardless of where you live in any given state, whether you're in an urban area, suburban area, or rural area, you can access that online public school. And for some families, online schools are the only option they have other than their assigned school. And so for families that might have students that are struggling in that one school, I mean, imagine the angst they must have that they cannot access any other school option. Online school provides that one option. And for many, it's a safety net. And for many, it's the best option. And for others, it's a temporary option. But the fact that that option exists for families, I think, is so unique and makes online schools an incredibly important piece of the public education system. And then I also think it's a unique model that really invites parents to be partners in public education as well too. And I think too many families these days, too many parents feel as if they're observers on the outside when they send their child to a traditional public school. It should never be that way. It shouldn't have ever been that way, but it's gotten that way for some families and for some public school systems. I think this is a model that truly invites parents to be a part of their child's education system, provides them transparency into what their child is learning, into what the teachers are teaching. And like we always say, this is not a model that's for every child. It may not even be a model that's for most children. But for some kids and for some families, it's an incredibly important option, and one that we hope to be able to see in all 50 states at some point in time. Well, online schools have been around for nearly 20 years. They've developed a lot of new models and teaching models and ways in which they can reach students. And interaction and engagement are two really important pieces of that puzzle. And when you talk to online school teachers, they'll tell you that oftentimes in this model, they're able to get better engagement with their students and better interaction with their students than they could in traditional schools for a variety of different reasons. But because teachers are able to track the students' progress over time, they're able to intervene in ways that often can't be done at traditional school level. And, one of the interesting things about online schools, since they've been around for nearly 20 years now, is the diversity in the types of students that are attending these schools. All types of different types of students, not only geographic diversity, ethnic and socioeconomic backgrounds, but also kind of how they're doing academically. You have learners that are doing extraordinarily well, and they're outpacing other students in their grades. And then you have other students who come in because they were struggling academically in their prior setting, or might be coming in the high school level with significant numbers of credits behind. And so the ability to be able to tailor the instruction for that student from the time that they come in and for as long as they stay into that school is really unique. It's something that online schools have been able to do. But for a lot of families with special needs students, they find that this environment is actually better for them than the traditional classroom environment. Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions about online learning, and frankly, some of them that have been misconceptions that we've seen from the time when online schools first began, and they still exist today. A couple of them are, students can't socialize, and that's really not true. We find a lot of students find excellent socialization opportunities in online schools, not only through their school, but because of the flexibility that online schools provide. It gives these students, in some cases, more opportunities than their peers in traditional schools to be able to pursue their passions, whether that be athletics or music, art, things of that nature. For families that are involved in a lot of civic activities, it gives those students a lot of opportunities as well too. So socialization is certainly a big one. I think teacher interaction is another one as well too. How do teachers provide that interaction in that way? And can they really develop a close relationship? So I think a lot of questions around that. Yeah, some of the big legislative issues that advocates of online schools are pursuing in state capitals all across the country. are some of the, in some cases, there's some of the ones that have been around for a long time: equal funding, equal access. In some cases, you have states where legislation or regulation prevents online schools from being able to serve a greater numbers of students. And of course, then you build up waiting lists needlessly because online schools don't have the capacity constraints that traditional schools have. So caps are one, equal funding, the ability for online charter schools, for example, to be able to contract with whatever entity they want to contract with. And then we're seeing some new ones emerge as well too, which are really interesting. For years, online school students have had to take state tests in proctored settings in physical locations, meaning they often had to travel several miles, or often over a period of several days, in order to take these state mandated tests. And a lot more legislators are moving towards remote proctored exams for students that are in full-time online schools, and that more and more states are adopting that. And I think there's a lot of energy behind that. An important one, I think, at the federal level as well, too, is to ensure that students who qualify for free and reduced lunch benefits can access those benefits, even though they're in online schools. Currently, the rules only allow students that are in traditional schools to be able to access those federal meal benefits. But a public school student, whether they're learning in a traditional school or at home in an online school, should have equal access to those benefits that they qualify for. So those
It's really the most important question you can ask, quite honestly, because if your hybrid environment doesn't clearly designate what you get from the humans versus what you get from your digital side, then you're not quite in the hybrid experience. They need to be able to articulate that the online should be setting the foundation of learning, and then the humans, when you're with them, will set the ceiling, and that ceiling needs to be real high. That should be focusing on what the humans do well. That's interacting, adapting, making it engaging, all those things that we do so well that digital just does not do well yet. And, making sure that we get to know each of the students and say, okay, you can push this far, but you need a little more help at this spot. So, yeah, just being real good about what does online do, what do your humans do, and let the two never overlap each other. Yeah, the benefits of hybrid have to be number one, flexibility. Really, the tenets are make sure you're empowering the student to make decisions that fit for them. So if whatever hybrid you get into isn't offering you an empowering moment, oh, we want to be here for this amount and less for this certain amount. Let's say you are a high level athlete and you need this space to go work out here, to go to your practice here, or you need to be at the college for this time. Make sure that empowering is number one. It needs to be flexible, adaptable, and that is what that online does those things well. But what a missus might miss is some of that human side. Once you're there, let's say you have to take off for a certain amount of time and you flip to just the digital side, that when you come back, there's a full relationship waiting there for you with the other students, with the teacher, the face-to-face environment, that they're pushing you further. Or if you need tutoring to go on and meet with them to do that, then that's ready there for you. So the benefits of the hybrid is you have that human side there for you without being caged in a spot, for lack of a better word. You're not stuck in that one spot, that there's flexibility and adaptability built into it. Well, the one I'm in right now, and the reason I moved out here is just that. The state with the most, in my opinion, the most ability to be flexible is Arizona. Arizona right now is right up there. And I moved out from Pennsylvania, which is not a really, that is probably the opposite of that. Some other states, Texas is doing a really nice job with offering environments that are kind of open to the charter and to the hybrid realm. Colorado is passing good legislation that allows for hybrid to thrive. California has some; they're still a little tighter. But yeah, if I had to aim for states that were really big on that, I like what Texas, Arizona, California, those states are doing right now. Clearly, the legislative priority is dealing, number one, with the seat time issue. Most states have tackled this and said seat time can be several different things, but then they stick other, I want to say, onerous tasks on top of that. So for me, the legislative lift needs to be first understanding what hybrid can be. Go seeing what schools like Valor, Arizona does that we have out here when we're given space and we're accountable to all things, the things we can do. So step one is look at that. The second is set up a time that makes sense, that where the kids, yes, you want them on site for this, and this is what they will do, and online can have this value as well. Then not make it this weird binary opposition where you're either online and that gets this flexibility, or you're on site and you get no flexibility. Finding that understanding between the two and getting clear designations and requiring your schools to designate what each one does, and that way it's fair to all taxpayers, to all constituents, to the parents, to the kids. Put as many regulations on as you want, as long as you understand what each one of those roles do. Well, the current struggles are, number one, funding. I know even in Arizona, in order for us to get the flexibility we need, we're only at 90% of the funding that a traditional school gets, which, it's worth the gap, but why is there a gap when we're doing that? The second one is understanding. Hybrid got beat up during the word hybrid, I should say, got beat up during the pandemic when schools weren't ready for it, so they called it hybrid when they were sending packets out to kids and called it hybrid. Real hybrid got its name beat up, and we need to get that back. So much so that I'm starting to use the word flexible, flexible learning, that kind of thing. And maybe it's not winnable, but hybrid has to mean give to online what online does well, give to humans what humans do well. And the lift now is getting people to understand that good schools that run good hybrid programs have identified what each of those do and accelerates what each student will do in those environments and maximizes the potential of both. Simply that hybrid is about empowering. It's empowering. I mean, there's incredible flexibility with online, and I want that to stay. There's incredible power in what traditional does face to face. We now, with the advent of AI and all the online digital tools we have got to be good at what humans do. And we cannot overlap with what online does, or we have lost that battle already, and Terminator has begun. We got to be out there saying, hey, humans do this incredibly well. Let's stay with this. No more worksheets and watch kids do worksheets. Let's just give to online what it does, give to humans what they do well, and get that ceiling incredibly high and getting our kids using the tools and techniques set up to some really great targets, and that involves us being there with them.
Yeah, so private schools tend to be more focused on the development of the whole child. While academics are always going to be at the forefront of any educational approach they take, they also encourage students to explore their roles in their communities. They find ways that they can positively impact the folks around them. This is very consistent with what we hear from parents, frankly. Academic achievement is often only one small piece of the puzzle when it comes to a child's education. And often it isn't the top priority, at least not as determined by test scores. We would all love for test scores to be great, and we want that to be the case, but often those test scores just aren't what the parents are looking for. They're looking for other values and other philosophies that other schools can provide. And that's why we feel that offering parents options is so important, because it does allow families to determine what's most important to them, what's most important for their child, and then find the school that best fits whatever those things that they want, whatever best fits that mold. So there are a number of ways that private schools look to differentiate themselves. Some private high schools require more credits than the state minimum is to graduate. Others may choose to accelerate coursework for younger students in lower grades who can handle more rigor by offering subjects like calculus or physics. I was not one of those kids, but there are a lot of schools that do offer that to younger students who have a desire to move faster through their schooling. Co-curricular programs, clubs, athletics also tend to be pretty expansive in private schools, and those provide students the opportunities to take their skills that they're learning through school, the more academic skills, and apply them into real world activities. So, historically, private school choice has been most closely tied to programs like voucher programs or tax credit scholarships that a lot of folks are familiar with, where funds, the state funds a child's education at a private school. A check goes directly to a private school on behalf of a student or a family to pay for tuition. ESA's Education Savings Account, and that name is going to vary depending on which state we're talking about. ESA's changed that dynamic completely. What ESAs do is they allow for the state funding to go into an account that the parent is able to control. They can use it for private school tuition, of course. That's the top thing that parents use these ESAs for. But maybe a student needs a specialized tutor. Maybe they're struggling in math or reading, and they need a tutor for that. Maybe a parent and a family has a special needs student who has a specific type of educational therapy that they need. With an ESA, parents can use this funding not just for the private school tuition, but they can also use it for other educational environments as well and other educational opportunities. Like I said, ESAs offer the utmost flexibility for parents. As I mentioned, it's not just for private school tuition, but any number of different educational expenses. Oftentimes, those educational expenses are spelled out in the law that's created. Some states allow for homeschooling families to participate, which allows for them to use their funding for curriculum or other extracurricular activities. Students, frankly, could use it for private virtual school too, or some states also allow public schools to participate in ESA programs where maybe they could offer a specific course or a specific activity that their school excels at. What a ESA does is it allows a parent to say, okay, well, I want to use $400 for this, or I may want to use $500 for this, all as long as it, of course, complies with the program statute, and it's ultimately in the goal of making sure their child gets the best education possible. So the flexibility that an ESA provides is just off the charts, and really allows parents to really have control over what that educational experience looks like. I mean, each state's unique. It would be tough to look and say one state is better than the others. There are certainly states that are more expansive when it comes to eligibility or the overall program size. I would say the best policies are designed in a way that allow for a broad number of eligible uses, as we were just talking about, and provides parents with actionable feedback on how their child is doing. You look at recent states like Iowa that has passed an ESA program. Georgia just recently passed an ESA program that will go into effect next year. Florida's program has transitioned to a ESA program over the last handful of years. Everyone's familiar with Arizona because Arizona was the first state to pass a program that allowed for all students to be eligible. And school choice, has done this for a long time, but ESA's kind of take it to the next level. It changes the conversation. It allows for us to not have to talk about school in the form of a school building. Frankly, it allows us to say, it's not about whether you're being educated in this public school building, this private school building. Maybe you're in your house, either being homeschooled or doing virtual education. It's not about where the education takes place. It's about how much the child is learning. And I think, at the end of the day, that's what we all want for our children. We all want our children to excel in their educational experience, ultimately getting them into a place where they have a successful life and successful career and give back to society. So I really think that ESAs are putting us in a position to say, hey, it's not just about this model. It's not just about this model. And it's not just about this model. It's about looking at the whole child and figuring out what they need to really succeed in their educational journey. I'm excited about the shift to ESAs. I think it's been fantastic for parents. I think more parents are taking advantage of it than ever before. It's also allowed for more creativity, honestly, in the education space for education entrepreneurs. We've seen micro schools now pop up over the last handful of years, which are just small little homeschool like pods in certain areas. All of these things are only going to make us better as we seek to educate kids. The most important thing that you can do is to research this in your state. You know, not every state has an ESA program. A lot of states have some type of private school choice program. Um, I would encourage you to look into those if you need help, need resources. You know, American Federation for Children, where I work, would love to talk to you about the options that may be are in your state. But you know, all we want for all of our children is to have the best education possible. Um, and uh, and so I would encourage you to seek out all options. I appreciate the work that PSO does. Appreciate the work that these families these families do in educating their kids. I'm excited about the next generation of students. I really am. I think there's a lot of folks who talk negatively about the next generation of students. I think we're raising some of the best and brightest, and I'm excited for what the next generation may bring.
Microschools differ from other schooling models because they are so relationship based. Microschools are really focused on knowing the children that they're serving, knowing the families, and it's a true partnership between families and the educators in the microschool. So microschools look different. Every microschool that you visit, each model looks so different from the next. They do prioritize individualized learning, but that looks different in each microschool, whether it's a microschool with a set curriculum and following individualized plans for each child, or a truly self-directed microschool where there is no curriculum and students are choosing what they're learning. So it's done in a variety of ways, but it's always so exciting to see how microschools are prioritizing their students' learning experiences. I think something else that microschools do that's really exciting is the unbundling of curriculum. It's not, signing up for one full package of we're going to get math, science, literacy, all of that from one place. It's choosing what works for their kiddos and pulling it from a variety of sources. So microschools can be organized in a variety of different ways. We work with microschools that are serving homeschooling students as a learning center. We work with microschools that are private schools. Oftentimes they're non-accredited, non-public schools. It really depends on the state framework and the way that microschools can operate within the state. For example, in Nevada, we have some of the most overregulated private schools and some of the best homeschooling laws. And then there are other states where it's fairly easy to be a non-public school and there's not as much regulation involved there. We also work with microschools that are organized as an LLC, others that are organized as a nonprofit. There's really a variety of different ways to create a microschool. Microschools show their impact and their outcomes in a variety of different ways. According to the latest research that the center just published in April, our 2024 sector analysis, microschools are showing impact. 67% of them do observation-based reporting, 51% track mastery, 48 use portfolios. There's just such a variety of ways, and microschool founders are committed to showing their impact. But oftentimes, let's keep in mind that that includes non-academic learning as well as academic learning. I'd love to shift and talk from a parent perspective for a moment. I mean, I see the growth that my child has every morning when he's excited to go to school. This is the same kiddo that in elementary school, in second grade, he would spin in circles to make himself dizzy enough that he would throw up because he knew that if he threw up, he wasn't allowed to go to school because you have to wait 24 hours to be able to go to school after throwing up. And now this is the same kid who, if they are out of school because their micro school isn't open for that day for whatever reason, he's, flopping about, oh, I'm so bored. I just wish I was in school. This is the same kid that really was struggling with confidence. He was really struggling with making friends. And now it's exciting to me when I have to tell him to get off the phone to go to bed because he's playing video games with his friends while they're on the phone or having those kind of cool relationships. So as a parent, I see that growth in a variety of ways. And I'm super fortunate to be able to work with microschool founders every day and to hear similar stories from these founders of what they hear from their families. They're truly changing the lives of the kids they work with. I think one of the biggest misconceptions that's currently out there is that microschools are for rich families, and that's just not the case. Again, going back to the research that we just published in April, our 2024 sector analysis shows us that actually only 12% of families are above the average income for their area. So we surveyed 400 micro schools in a variety of different states throughout the nation. And again, only 12% of their families are above the average income for their area. The majority of families are either at or below the average income. And I think that that is a really crucial distinction and an important misconception to clear up. To leave us alone. um, I really think that microschooling is about removing barriers, right? So um, it's it's important to really take a look at the regulatory system it was just not designed in a way to handle microschools, right? It wasn't anticipating microschools, and it's a very outdated system. But I think removing barriers is the most important. And also, just if you feel like you've got the legislative answer, please make sure that you've talked to a micro school founder before you set that in action. Really listening to micro schools and understanding their needs and truly what the problem is important before trying to take any steps to create change. So when we look at which states micro schools are thriving in from a regulatory perspective, I think there's a few different things that we need to consider. I mean, we think about ESAs, right? And oh yeah, of course, micro schools are going to thrive in ESA states. That's not always the case. I mean, Florida's doing great, right? There are amazing micro schools popping up in Florida, and the ecosystem there is just booming, and we love it. We're so excited about it. But there are other states where ESAs have just completely left micro schools behind. So as we're considering ESA language, being mindful of micro schools is incredibly important. And then there are states that don't have ESAs and likely won't see an ESA for quite some time, if ever. And we have to look at what it looks like to thrive there from a regulatory perspective. And some of these states, what micro schools are doing sometimes feels half outlaw, but they're still finding ways to thrive and grow. So it's really looking at it from those two different angles, right? In ESA states, what's happening that's allowing micro schools to participate in the ESAs if they choose to, making sure that we're not including language that can make it difficult for a micro school that's maybe a hybrid micro school or a micro school that doesn't want to jump through the hoops to become accredited, what that looks like. And then in non-ESA states, are micro schools thriving within the frameworks that they're given, and how can we remove some barriers to help there? Yeah, I think Arkansas is really close to getting it right. We're super excited about what's happening in Arkansas. We're watching North Carolina closely, excited about North Carolina. Uh, uh, Iowa, right? That's just not a state that's friendly towards micro schools and their ESA program. Oklahoma, we're really excited about Oklahoma as well. I think if you're interested at all in micro schooling, go check out a micro school. Go see what they're about. Talk to the micro school founders and educators. There's a variety of options, and what's so exciting is that you can find a place for your child to thrive because there are so many different options, and it's not confined within a box. I have 3 kids, and each one of them is in a different micro school because they all learn differently and they all have different needs. So I would say just see what's out there, go check it out and take a look and ask your questions, because I will tell you, micro school folks involved in the micro school movement are definitely ones that love to talk about micro schooling. So reach out and feel free to contact the National Micro Schooling Center. We're also happy to help connect you to micro schools near you.
It it depends also on the size of the district. If you're talking about a large district like Miami-Dade County Public Schools, the amount of resources that are available for schools is pretty substantial, and it's both financial as well as human resources. The support that the district provides to schools in terms of uh, curricular support, financial support, developing programs is something that a lot of very small districts or programs that are um, outside of a school district might not be able to be offered to that degree or to that extent. There are many programs that schools have. There's PTAs, there's advisory councils, there are community education, there are parent involvement classes. So there are ad hoc committees where community people can participate and have a voice. So the extent to which the school district provides opportunities for parents and community people to raise their voices is unique and very extensive. Additionally, when every school district goes through a 5-year strategic plan, the plan is developed through community participation. So the superintendent may go out to schools and seek input not only from community member and stakeholders, but particularly from parents and students alike. When you have a school district, and I'm talking a large school district like Miami-Dade County Public Schools, you have all sorts of extracurricular activities. And I'm talking about not only athletic, because you do have all of the sports. I mean, you even have lacrosse, and you have boys and girls, and you have swimming, and you have polo, and you have basketball, and you have volleyball, football. So it's a myriad of athletic opportunities that are available for all students to participate, both boys and girls. But there's also a slew of extracurricular activities, clubs, honor societies, interest clubs, glee club, um, uh, drama clubs, national honor societies, science. So I think one of the things that charter schools has done for school districts is that they have made them more competitive. It used to be like we were the only game in town. Well, we're no longer the only game in town. So we have to innovate. And so school choice, magnet programs, are a great way in which districts are trying to recapture students that may have left them. So, for example, in Miami-Dade, you have an environmental school that happens to be located in the zoo of Miami. You have an all boys schools, you have an all girls schools, you have a magnet school that has 5 different academies, and it takes kids from all over the schools. You have IB programs, and you have Cambridge programs, and some of them are school wide, and some of them are choice. So there are many ways in which school districts are trying, because we understood that we had to compete for the students. It wasn't like before. The students had to come because we were it. They were assigned to our school, and they didn't have any other choice. So just like choice programs have been innovative in charter schools, so have school districts. Well, I've been retired now for 10 years, but obviously parental involvement and choice, it continues to be a great focus for legislative agenda, right? Parents are becoming more and more knowledgeable about what schooling is, and they're becoming more and more selective. So I think the proliferation of choice across the board is something that I think it's not going to go away, and it's going to be a part of the legislative agenda for the next couple of years. Well, I think a lot of parents believe that district schools do not are not providing a an environment that is home based, that accepts parents, that accepts kids for who they are, that where the kids are a number. And I can tell you that I was a high school principal many years ago in a high school in a large district in Miami-Dade. I had 4,600 students in the third year of when I opened, but yet we make sure that we knew kids. We knew who the kids were. We were accepting of kids. We made the school a home environment for kids and also for parents, so that the kids didn't feel like they were just a number. And I think that's a great misconception, maybe from parents and kids, that they're going to get lost because it's a large school. And that's not necessarily the case. District schools and districts go out of their way to make sure that kids feel that they belong and that they're known at the school site, and that parents are welcome to be involved in the schools and in their children's education. Not be afraid, not automatically think that we are the big monster at the end of the road, or give us a look. There are lots of options. My daughter, went to public schools. She's a very successful CPA, and my grandkids are going to public schools, and that's our choice. And they are being very successful. And the reason why I put them there is because I know that the product is a good product. So when before parents say no to a public school, take a look, observe, go talk to the principals, talk to the teachers, go talk to kids in the neighborhood and find out whether that school is providing the kind of education that will be beneficial for your child. And that's what that I think that's what's good about where we are now, is that parents have lots of choices, but they need to be informed about what those choices are so that they can make an informed choice for their kids at the end.
More than 3 decades ago, states started creating charter school laws in order to increase flexibility and autonomy of schools so that they could be responsive to their community and to families, and to spur innovation, to create new models and be a place where you could incubate ideas and then expand them over time. This has worked, and there's great demand for these schools. In Texas, there are currently 76,000 students on public charter school waitlists waiting for a seat in a school of their choosing. I think what really sets charter schools apart is the wide variety of school models that you can find under the charter school umbrella. You can find Montessori schools, classical academies, dropout recovery schools, schools that are intentionally developed to serve students with autism or with dyslexia, early college high schools, STEM academies. There really is a lot to find in the charter school space. And I think it really goes back to that original purpose of creating charter schools, was to spur innovation. And we've seen that across the state and across the country. This is not my favorite question that we are still having to answer, despite 3+ decades of charter schools in the country, but this is still a common myth. Yes, public charter schools are public. They are in fact public. They are publicly funded. They are open to the public. They are tuition free, and they are accountable ultimately to the public and to the families that they serve. So yes, charter schools are public schools. You can't ask a Texan a question about what state might be doing something best and expect them not to say Texas. So obviously I'm going to say Texas, but I really do believe from a regulatory perspective, especially in the last few years, we've seen really great steps forward on the charter school space and the regulatory environment that we have here. Thanks a lot in part to work with the Texas Education Agency and the work they've done to clear regulatory burdens for our charter schools on the ground. This is a really, really easy one, and I think it's a resounding single word, which is facilities. Across the country, facilities continues to be a really big challenge for charter schools. No matter what state you're in, it's a challenge that you've either encountered along the way and found some ways to kind of create some solutions, or are currently experiencing. And the biggest driver of most of the funding gap in many states between traditional school districts and charter schools is facilities funding. And so we have to continue to work on that and make sure that we find creative ways, and then also just funding to address the challenges that charter schools are having with finding safe and secure facilities that are good for kids and their learning.